Hello everyone, my name is Rob from RobOps, and today we'll be walking through hosting in our Website from Scratch series. In this video, we'll walk through the steps required to host our front end and make it accessible via a domain of our choosing. As a reminder, this is part 2 of a 3-part series where I walk through how to build a website from scratch. If you haven't had a chance to check out part 1, I would recommend checking it out to create your own front end. Alternatively, feel free to use the front end that I developed in the part 1 that is available at my GitHub page linked below. So before we jump into the video, we're going to go over what we hope to accomplish. If you're following along in this series, you'll remember that in part 1, we created our own front end using Next.js and Tailwind, and we hosted it locally. We're going to take those files, and instead of hosting them on our local machine, we're going to go through the steps required to host them on the internet. This will involve setting up our architecture on AWS using components like S3, CloudFront, Route 53, and Certificate Manager. The architecture we'll be setting up will look something like this. We are essentially going to use Route 53 to route requests from our domain to our CloudFront. Our CloudFront will be responsible for serving the files from an S3 bucket back to our customers. Certificate Manager will be used to ensure that we can create a secure connection with our customer's browser. All of the files that we created in part 1 will be uploaded in the S3 bucket. CloudFront will act as a listener in front of that bucket to serve our website to customers who request our domain. With all that said, let's jump into the console. Here we are in the console, and the first thing I'm going to do is purchase a domain name. To do that, we're going to go over to Route 53, and we're going to click Registered Domains. And we're going to see domains, if any, that you have registered through AWS. If you have domains registered with other providers, they wouldn't appear here, but they are easy to transfer in. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be buying a domain through the AWS registrar and hosting and setting up the hosted zones that way. Most registrars will have very detailed instructions on how to set these up, and they're all very similar. So following along here, you should be able to connect the dots with your own registrar. So once I click register domain, I'm going to check for availability. Here, I'm just going to try RobOps Live as an example. And as you can see, we have the .com available, so we're just going to select it. We're going to click proceed to checkout. We're going to get it for 1 year. We're going to take auto renew off. Once you've gone through all that, you'll have a request for a new domain, which is in progress. A domain should be available to you shortly. Once that's completed, you should see successful beside your request for RobOps Live. And what we're going to do is go to hosted zones after that. Hosted zones are essentially a zone that will let us define different types of routing records for the domain of our choosing. But we'll also notice that we have a hosted zone created for us. This happens when we register our domains through AWS. It will automatically create a hosted zone. And as you can see in the description, it was created by the Route 53 registrar. If I click into this record, I'll notice there's 2 routing records, a name server record and a SOA record. These are the records that are going to help route traffic to our domain from the internet. So now that this has been set up for us, we're going to need to create a certificate for this domain. To do that, we're going to head over to ACM. So from here, we're going to type ACM, which is Amazon Certificate Manager service. And essentially, we're going to need to create a certificate for our domain. This is what's going to make sure that we are the true owners of the domain that we are going to be routing to from our website. And this is what's going to enable a secure connection over HTTPS for our customers. So over here, we're going to click Request. We're going to request a public certificate. And we're going to request the public certificate for our domain name. In this case, it's robopslive.com. And we're going to say disable export, DNS validation instead of email, RSA 280, and we're going to click request. And so what this is going to do is it's going to request a certificate for our domain. So while I wait for the validation, I'm going to click into the certificate and I'm going to click create records in Route 53. And so this is going to look up our domain, and it's going to create a record in our hosted zone. So now if I go to Route 53 and I go to our hosted zones and then I click into RobOps Live, I should notice that I have a new CNAME record. So this is going to speed up this is going to trigger the DNS validation process of our certificate. And so if I go back to Certificate Manager, we should soon see this change from pending validation to issued. So after a bit of time, we see that our certificate for RobOps Live has now been issued. We're going to go and set up some of the other infrastructure for the project, namely the S3 bucket and the CloudFront distribution. So to do that, we're going to go to the console here. We're going to click S3. And we're going to click Create Bucket. And this bucket is just going to be a general purpose bucket called RobOps Live Site Bucket. And these names typically need to be unique. It's just going to be a general purpose bucket. ACLs will be disabled, and we're going to block all public access. We're going to disable versioning for the purposes of this demo. We're not going to add any tags, and we're just going to use default encryption. Click Create. And we now have our bucket. Obviously, it's an empty bucket, but this is where we're going to upload our site files. And so in order to do that, we actually have to generate those site files from our front-end code view. So we're going to hop back over to there. So now that we're back in the code view, we have to actually make an edit to our site files here. And so if we go into the next config, what we're going to need to do here is define an export. And so this is basically so that when we build our website files, we tell Next.js to output the static files to an output directory. And so if I click Save here, this is the configuration that will tell Next.js to do that. And so now, if I pull up my terminal and I run npm run build, this is going to build my site files. And so it's built my files. And based on the configuration I added, it should also build an out directory for my static files. So now if I go back to my project, I'll notice I have an out directory, and this out directory is what we're going to upload to S3. And now if I switch back to my console view, and all I'm going to do is copy all of the content within that out directory into the S3 bucket. And so you'll see all of the chunks here, and I click upload, and this is going to add the chunks to the website. Now that's complete, click close, and now we have our static files in our bucket. So now that we have our bucket created and our static files uploaded, we're going to move over to CloudFront and create our CloudFront distribution. Just click CloudFront in your AWS Console. You'll be redirected to this page. And here we're going to select Create Distribution. And we're going to fill out these details. I'm just going to say RobOps Live CloudFront distribution. And I'm just going to put no description, and it's going to be for a single website or app. So our CloudFront is going to be a CDN, which stands for Content Delivery Network. And essentially, our CloudFront is going to efficiently serve our static files to our customers. When I say efficiently, I mean in certain cases, if the files are being requested over and over again, they'll be cached at an edge location for our customers. That way, the entire list of files isn't being fetched every single time. This will make the website more performant, and it will reduce the burden on our static file access. So we're going to click Next here, and then we're going to say Amazon S3 as our origin type. And for the S3 origin, we're going to select our bucket. So if I go RobOps Live Site Bucket, I'm going to choose this. The path I'm going to leave blank. And if I scroll down here, we're going to say allow private S3 bucket access recommended. And so this is going to create a policy within our S3 bucket. And use recommended origin settings. So just click Next here. And we're not going to enable any security protections, and we're going to click Next. So this is essentially the general distribution setting, and we're going to click Create Distribution. This is going to create a CloudFront distribution for us. While this deploys, we can click in and see how things have been configured. We'll notice our origin is RobOps Live, and we'll have different sets of behaviors for the default and general. In general, I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to select the file that I want to load at the default root object. In our case, it's going to be our index.html file that was loaded into our out repository, our out directory that we copied into S3. I'm going to click Save Changes. Now that our distribution is live, we're going to go try to access our site files that are pointing to our S3 bucket. To do that, I'm going to click into my distribution and click the distribution domain name. Then I'm going to load my browser and click Enter. We'll see here that we say access denied with a host ID. This means that our CloudFront distribution was unable to forward the request to our S3 bucket. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, we haven't defined permissions to allow our CloudFront distribution to access our S3 bucket. Secondly, if we go to our S3 bucket, and we look at the permissions, we don't have a bucket policy that will allow our CloudFront to access objects within this bucket. So to fix this, we're going to start in our CloudFront. We're going to go to our CloudFront distribution, and we're going to go to Origins, and we're going to click our origin, and we're going to click Edit. Here we have origin access set to public, origin, but what we want is origin access control. And so in order to do that, we're going to click this option, and we're going to click Create New OAC. And here we're just going to give it RobOps Live OAC as its name. And we're going to use the default settings and click Create. Now, we also get a prompt here to say you must allow access to CloudFront using this statement. And so we're going to copy it. Then we're going to click Save Changes. Once we save those changes, we're going to head back over to S3. And we're going to go to our bucket. And we're going to go to permissions. And we're going to paste that policy that was provided. So to do that, we're going to click Edit. And we're going to paste. And this is the policy that the CloudFront distribution provided us. And we're going to click Save Changes. So now we've added the bucket policy. And if I go back to CloudFront, we'll notice that our changes are deploying. So once those are deployed, we'll check back. So now we see our CloudFront distribution has deployed our changes, and we're going to just do the exact same step. We're going to copy the distribution, and we're going to paste it into our new tab. And here we have our website. Awesome. Here we see the website that we created locally is now deployed on the internet. If I click the About section, we can see the About section. If I click Home, I can go back home. Everything is working as expected, except one thing. We're currently accessing the website directly through our CloudFront domain. This is suboptimal because obviously we want to route our users to the domain we purchased at the beginning of the video. So in order to do that, we're going to go back to our CloudFront, and we're going to click Add Domain Name. And so here, we're going to simply put robopslive.com, and we're going to click Next. And we're going to see that we have our TLS certificate that we configured earlier present in the dropdown. If you don't, you need to make sure that your certificate is issued in the ACM console. Here, I'm going to select robopslive.com, and I'm going to click Next. Now that we've set up our certificate, we need to create routing records in our hosted zone to route RobOps Live to our CloudFront distribution. To do that, we can simply click Route Domains to CloudFront, and it's going to create A records for our CloudFront in Route 53. And I'm going to click Set Up Routing Automatically. Now, if I go to Route 53, and I go to my hosted zone for RobOps Live, I'll see now I have 2 A records pointing to my CloudFront. So now, if I go to robopslive.com, click enter, I'm able to load my website. More convincingly, if I go from Google, we can see our site is now live on our domain. Amazing. Now what we've done is procured a domain name, set up the routing necessary to route our users from their browsers to our CloudFront, through our CloudFront to our S3 bucket to recover our site files and load our website. This completes part 2. We now have a website hosted on the internet that we created ourselves. However, there are some drawbacks. The process for updating this site as part of a normal development cycle is very burdensome. We would have to run the npx run build command again after every change, take that output directory, upload it to S3, and then we would have to invalidate the cache within our CloudFront to allow our changes to be present on our website. This takes time. With tens of changes happening every day, this adds a lot of debt to our development lifecycle. And so in the next video, we're going to tackle how we can do this automatically and create a very healthy development loop for our website. So now we have our front end being served through CloudFront to our users over the internet. In part 1 of this video, we created our front end. In this part, we were able to set up the required infrastructure to host these files on the internet. And so in the next video, we're going to take a shot at how we set up automation on top of this setup to enable a faster developer workflow. And with that said, thanks for watching. Like I mentioned before, and at the end of every video, if you are interested in joining my Discord, if you have questions about any of the topics that we talk about in these videos, please feel free to join. If you are interested in the actual code that went into this video, which isn't much, it is available on my GitHub page. And additionally, if you prefer to read about these types of videos, I do typically post blogs of each of these videos as well on my website, robertdipolito.me. So once again, thank you for watching. If you liked and found this interesting, please consider subscribing. It really helps. And I really hope that you're enjoying this video series. Thanks. Bye.